One of the biggest things we've been talking about are these pre-positioned assets, these things that Governor Newsom says he wants these crews here in the area and staying in the area in case there were any flare-ups with the Eden or the Palisades fire. And sure enough, it's this fire that occurs here, the Hughes fire in Santa Clarita. And pre-positioned assets, we're talking about bulldozers and helicopters that can drop water and tanker jets that are already here in the area. You can only imagine what this situation would be like if all those assets from around the state weren't here in Southern California, and how fast this could have reached the 5 freeway. It's about 20 minutes since we last checked in. We saw this is much more calm than what we saw earlier there. Earlier in this broadcast, we saw winds that were gusting right around 40 miles per hour, which was what we were seeing from these crews and from CAL FIRE. But I want to check in now to show you what we're seeing right up now. You can see these bright lights from these bulldozers that are going through down in that mouth of that canyon. It's kind of in that canyon area is where those bulldozers are going to create paths for fire crews to fight those flames that are on the top of that mountain right there.
And well, you said things have kind of calmed down out there, but what are those winds looking like now? Because a lot of people have said they're kind of like, you can't really predict them.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest question, Rochelle, that you're asking there. I mean, right now they are much calmer, but one of the biggest concerns is, well, we've been able to see these winds over the course of these last 3 weeks pick up without a moment's notice, and we're still now hearing, as you can hear, helicopters coming into this area, which kind of sends the signal that, you know what, these airdrops may not be done yet. And earlier on, I was talking about pre-positioned crews. I was talking about all these crews coming down from Northern California. We actually saw a couple from San Diego County as well that are still in this area. And what they're trying to do is saying, hey, we're still here because we don't know what these winds are going to do. Of course, we've heard red flag warnings issued in this area as well as Southern California. So something to keep an eye on as these conditions still are very unpredictable, even if this flare-up in particular is seeing some of its last embers.
Will, we've been talking about the winds. What does it look like right now?
Well, right now it's much calmer than what we saw earlier. This is around 5 or 5:30 or so. We're still seeing several of those gusts, and we still saw several flare-ups in the area that we are right now. Right now it's dark around us, but it's not dark down this hill. I want to take you to all these assets that we've been talking about, these pre-positioned assets that you've been hearing about from fire crews still staying in Los Angeles County in the aftermath of the Palisades and Eden fires. And you can see a whole line of trucks, fire trucks, filling up that road, which is the Tapia Canyon Road, down there right next to the 5. We're about a half mile or so from the 5 freeway. You can barely tell because of how dark it is. Normally this would be lit up with lights, and we're only also about 15-30 minutes outside of Kern County if you were to normally take the 5. So crews are here, they're in place. We're not seeing any flare-ups in the area where we are right now, which is some pretty good news for the moment. And now we want to bring in somebody who is a familiar face for us folks in Kern County. That's Kern County Fire Department PIO Jonathan Drucker. And what have you seen today? I know you got a chance to go further up on the ridge. What were the flames like out there?
Well, we're still seeing the flames run in dry brush, and fortunately the winds have died down though. It's not like what we were seeing earlier where the wind was aligning with the terrain and we saw really crazy fire behavior. It was leaning over, it was spotting out in front of itself, but now fortunately we've seen an improvement in conditions. The winds have died down, and we're looking forward to trying to make some good progress tonight.
And we saw all these trucks that were lined up. I was counting Merced, Sacramento, Truckee, and we saw just other forest wildland fire service out this way too, and CAL FIRE too. What does Kern County Fire Department's presence still look like down here in Southern California?
So we've been bringing people home. We still have a strike team out, and we have 4 dozers here currently on this fire. But we've been bringing people home, giving them a chance to rest and get ready.
And I know winds are calm, but that's not always the case, especially in Santa Clarita of all places.
That's true. The winds can crank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's similar to Kern County, right? I mean, you guys are still planning to be here until this probably reaches some more containment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're here to help our friends, our neighbors, and we'll be here until they've got things under control.
What about this was particularly unique from a firefighting perspective that you saw up on those hills today?
Well, it's just the terrain. It's very steep. There are canyons, and the winds, these Santa Ana winds, they find those drainages, they find those canyons, and they just funnel through there. And when there's fire mixed with that, it's running.
Yeah, and also a lot of dry brush for folks who drive up this way too. What does that look like, especially after those 2 wet years and now a little bit of a drought?
Yeah, we're experiencing summer-like dryness in the vegetation. And yes, the temperatures are cooler, and that's a good thing, but the vegetation doesn't know that it's wintertime. The vegetation still thinks it's summer, so we need to get some moisture.
And I imagine you still worry about incidents like this popping up in Kern County with the vegetation still as is too.
We stay vigilant, we stay ready. It's fire season year-round, so we've always got to be ready to go.
KBAK reporter Will Silverstein with our sister station in Bakersfield is at the Grapevine tonight, keeping an eye on the traffic situation with the wildfire just a few miles to the south. Now, Will, I understand you just got an update on progress the firefighters are making, and also tell me what it's been like. You were out there as well when everything was shut down. Talk to me.
Yeah, we were out there earlier today when everything was shut down. We had to get special clearance to go on the Grapevine, and we traveled about 30 miles or so to get to the fire from the point of it being shut down, because as folks know who drive this Grapevine quite often, they tend to know that this is quite a long stretch of road, but there's also no way out. So when you have a fire like the Hughes fire today growing at over 10,000 acres in just under 7 hours, that means a lot of people have to get out of the way and get out of the way safely. We're lucky that at this point that is the case. Flames were crawling on the side of the mountain, much similar to the ones that you were seeing at the Palisades and Eden fires. And when we think about that acreage, I mean, 10,000 acres right now is already just 4,000 acres away from what the Eden fire in Altadena was, and we saw all the damage that that did. And of course, about half the size at the moment of the Palisades fire. Now, when we were up there earlier, it was about 0% containment at around 5 and 6 o'clock when we were doing our initial reporting. Now we're up to 14%, and that's a welcome trend near Lake Estaic. It's been interesting to watch as the winds have gotten a little calmer since.
That's what I was about to ask you, because clearly the winds are playing a really big factor in this. What are you seeing tonight? Have the winds just suddenly calmed down now, it appears?
Yeah, and that's a big story there. I mean, you're talking about the winds, and I was mentioning earlier how it gets a little bit more calm. It's so important because we were talking to a Kern County Fire Department staffer who was out there. One of the things he said, this is so unpredictable. The fire was blowing towards a lake, Lake Castaic, which almost seems like a great place for a fire to go to because you're heading towards a body of water where a helicopter could drop water that it picks up from the lake. But also if it blows the other way, it heads towards the 14, which is that other artery that connects the Central Valley and the desert down to Los Angeles. So this is kind of an interesting disposition as far as where this fire was going, and it still is not done yet. I mean, we saw flames as we were leaving the fire, so something quite interesting to keep an eye on is that this thing is not done despite an increase in containment.
And having been down there, did you see crews coming from all over, just as we saw for the fires down in near Altadena as well as Palisades?
Yeah, absolutely. We saw crews from your neck of the woods up closer to Fresno in Merced. We saw them driving in and out earlier today. We also saw crews from Sacramento and Truckee also making their way up north to fight the fire originally, or coming back up north later in the day. They were down there stationed, as was a lot of Kern County Fire crew, actually 4 bulldozers from Kern County Fire helping to fight that fire down there. There's still a lot of work to be done, and that was a big thing we talked about with the Kern County Fire engineer, was what happened if these crews were not already pre-positioned down there. It could be a much different story than the 14% containment that we see right now.
Will.
Yeah, it looks very nice now. We're starting to see cars going pretty quickly now on a normal pace in both directions, heading north and south, both to the San Joaquin Valley and to the San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles. So some good news there. It wasn't good news for most of the day, as you mentioned, with all that smoke that we had seen earlier. One of the things that we're seeing right now is this continued traffic